Hello, everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. I am Jordan Hall, and I am pumped to be joined by the Flyers pre- and post-game live host and the birthday girl,
Oh,
Ashlyn Sullivan. We are live at Rivers Casino, Philadelphia. And Ashlyn, happy birthday. How are you doing?
Where else would I want to spend it? With you guys here at Rivers Casino.
That's right. Talking Flyers. That's the best way to celebrate the birthday, in my opinion. Ashlyn, thank you so much for joining us on the birthday. The Flyers have lost 3 straight. They have 6 games left in this season. But some big news came out over the weekend. A big storyline I think everyone was following was, is Sean Couturier going to see some games this year? And the Flyers decided he is not. He is not going to play after this recovery from a second back surgery. Apparently he was cleared and he's good to go. But they want to hold him out. They don't want to run the risk. What did you think about that? He was not thrilled with the decision, but he's accepting it. How did you feel about it?
I don't think he should be thrilled because I think for him it's incredibly disappointing because this was a goal he was working towards all year long, and he was so public about the goal was to get back and contribute this year. But I very much understand the Flyers' side of this. The risk is way higher than the reward. There's 6 games left, and they're out of it. For Sean Couturier to go play 2 games and God forbid something happens, right now he can focus on another full summer, a full off season of work. And now you feel pretty good about training camp and where he's at. I totally get John Tortorella's side of this. I felt like it wasn't worth it. I get he wants to play and you'd like to see him play. We're all waiting for it. We're waiting for it to happen, but I guess we're just going to have to wait a little longer and wait towards training camp. But I never felt like it was worth it.
No, that's very fair. Especially given what the Flyers went through last year with injuries, and really, a bad image was kind of painted on the Flyers because of the injury problems last year. Guys coming back, getting re-injured, timelines not matching up with what they said earlier on with the injury. So that was a major concern, and I think the Flyers are still feeling that, and they're thinking Sean Couturier is an important player. If he comes back and gets hurt in one of these meaningless games, I mean, it would just be an awful look. I think an awful look on the team. So I think it's one, they're looking out for themselves a little bit. And 2, I think it's mostly they're looking out for Sean Couturier and just thinking why. But I understand his frustration. I mean, he worked so hard to get to where he is now. He's finally feeling good. I can only imagine the frustration after the first surgery when your back's not feeling right and you're feeling pain and you're like, what the heck's going on? You have to go through a second surgery. The plan was for him to be able to come back and play. He finally gets to that point and they say no. And I think the biggest thing is he just wanted to shake off rust and maybe feel like he played a game again going into the offseason. Now he's got to wait, I think, almost 22 months before, he'll play a game again in terms of from when he initially got hurt to come October next year or this year, next season.
Right.
So I think it's a tough spot. I felt like Sean Couturier deserved to get a game. That was just, I just felt like it would have been beneficial because Ashlyn last season, Kevin Hayes went through something similar where he was dealing with a ton of core muscle problems, and he came back in March, and after they finally got it figured out and everyone was like, why? Just shut him down. He came back, was one of their best players, and I think he built on that confidence. Do you think that could have been something Sean Couturier could have, a path he could have utilized?
I think the only plus of him coming back was for his personal growth in game. I think it would have been unrealistic to think he could contribute highly to the team because, of course, the speed of the game, especially right now in a playoff push when you're facing teams that are pushing for the playoffs, I think there'd be a learning curve. I think there'd be a gap where he would have to get back. I don't know how much he would contribute at this point. But for him, of course you want to get back. And of course he wants to prove to himself, hey, I still got it and I'm not missing a beat. That's the only thing I feel like is the loss in this situation is for his own personal confidence. But with the player we're talking about, he's going to get that in training camp. I mean, this is a guy that's now going to be roaring back coming and you hope for that point that he still has the fire he has right now. And I feel like they had to be careful. And this was kind of one of the first scenarios for Torts where he had the chance to kind of rewrite the script here, not rush him back, be careful how the image of the Flyers is represented. For Torts, I think this was a move in the right direction. Like, we're not going to mess this up. We're going to handle this the correct way, even if it means players are upset with me. He doesn't care about that. He's going to show that many times this season. I think this was one of the first examples where Torts was able to put his foot down and say, like, this is the way I'm going to run this team, and this is the way I want the Flyers to be represented, and I want to be cautious here.
It's a great point. Yeah, there was a lot of buzz about maybe players having a little too much say in terms of coming back early, because they're hockey players are hockey players.
Of course, they
Like,
want to come back.
they're going to come back when maybe they're a little dinged up, or maybe they're still feeling a lingering effect, and they're just going to say, "Hey, I'm good." And that was a rumor that maybe players had a little too much say, and Tortorella's probably saying, "No, that's no longer the case here." And he was pretty. He even smiled when he talked about Couturier being pretty ticked off about it. Tortorella liked that. He said that told me a lot about his competitiveness and why he is the player he is. So I think in the big picture, the biggest thing was getting Sean Couturier for next season and making sure he's healthy. I think the Flyers are trying to make certain of that.
Yeah, and everything's towards next season right now. And there's no reason to risk anything. Even we were talking about it on the last podcast with Carter Hart. There's no reason to rush him back right now. And we don't know the significance of the lower body injury, but he hasn't played in a couple of games. I know he's on the road trip. Maybe he gets a game here. I'm fine with seeing Felix Sandstrom and Sam Ersson the rest of the year. We've seen what Carter Hart can do. We know what he is. Yeah. If there's even a thought that this could be a worse injury, don't play him.
Yeah, you have to balance the risk with what the meaningfulness of these games. It's just not there.
Right.
And I think that's what the Flyers are doing here. You're seeing them try a couple different things, putting a young player here or there. They're not going to risk it with some of their, any of the players, but especially a guy like Sean Couturier, who's very much the face of the franchise.
Yeah, there's been so much shakeups the past couple of weeks, and now is the time to try something new, like the John Tortorella going up and coming back down. Why not try it?
Right.
I'm fine with it. Let's try things out. Let's trial and error and make a list of pros and cons for next season of what worked and what didn't work.
Very much. Flyers Talk is brought to you by Great Railing. Stop into Great Railing for the highest quality and lowest prices on all your railing, decking, and fencing needs. Another big storyline, Ashlyn, is Morgan Frost looking like he's potentially solidifying his spot for the future. A couple of 2-goal games. He has, I believe, 6 points in his last 4 games, 4 of them goals. Just looking like he's really trying to show he wants to be a part of this moving forward. It's very possible that John Tortorella was debating that over the course of this season. Do you feel like he's starting to change the mind of John Tortorella?
Big time. I think he is the biggest plus from the month of March. And this is a guy we challenged a lot of guys on the roster, and we were just talking about it, is who's going to work themselves out of the gray area. He was absolutely in the gray area, and he should be for the play of this past year. But credit to him to really take advantage of this past month, proved his coaching staff he belongs here. We now see the potential, and that's where I hope he stays consistent, because Tor's is going to say, well, I saw it, and if it goes away, where'd it go? But the team's leading goal scorers since New Year's, and I think it's awesome that he kind of took this upon himself to have a great end of the year where they're out of it, and you talked about pride a couple of months ago. This is a guy who was prideful that he wanted to show he belonged here.
Absolutely. And I think with Frost, the thing that really caught my eye is he has gotten better and he's gained confidence. He didn't taper off. I think sometimes you might see that from a young player when they're kind of this is really his first full crack at the NHL, first full season for a number of young players on this team. And you were wondering if, some of them would maybe taper off. Frost hasn't. He's actually gotten better. He looks even more comfortable at this level. Brad Shaw the other day, the associate head coach, was saying that it's looking like Frost is finding out how to be successful night in and night out. So consistency has been huge for him. I really think Tortorella wasn't totally sure about him. I think Danny Briere really likes him. Danny Briere's worked with Morgan. He's similar. From his playing days, he's very similar to Morgan Frost, smaller guy, that first round pick, didn't figure it out right away. But I think Danny Briere really likes him, and I think he's starting to win over Tortorella. And I think that's one player Danny's going to be in John Tortorella's ear about. It's like, hey, let's be patient with this kid. We like him. Let's make sure he's here for the future. Where do you think he potentially could fit next year, Ashlyn? A lot could change with this roster, but do you see him maybe as like a second line center?
I do. And I think more so, I think he's the guy you kind of want to build your team around. I know when we talk with Al and Scott on pre and post game, they're always so impressed how he's a guy that kind of leaves his ego at the door, and he's so coachable and he's so humble. And when you hear him speak, he talks about what John Tortorella talks about, of how he wants his game to improve. I really like that about him, of how he easily could have been in the tank, that he wasn't progressing the way we all wanted him to this year. and he used it as motivation. And every time you talk to him, there's still teachable moments. And I just think he's such a coachable guy. He's very humble, and he just seems like a guy you would want to build your locker room around.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very mature. It seems like he's always highlighting something maybe he didn't do well after a game, even on games where he's put up a couple goals and points.
Where he could easily boast about himself.
Exactly.
And he doesn't take the opportunity.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think Frost has really gained a ton of confidence and has been one of the bigger bright spots. As you mentioned, Ashlyn leading the team in scoring since the new year, which says a lot. So with Frost, I think he's definitely putting himself into the picture here moving forward. Catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone, including a great sports book. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So, Ashlyn, we have talked a ton about players with something to prove over these final stretch of games. Who can, win a spot? Who can try to win a job next year? 6 games left. If there's a player with the most to prove in your eyes, who might it be?
It's hard because I feel like with these remaining 6 games, even if a particular player goes and is lights out for these remaining 6 games, I still feel like it's not enough time to prove it in John Tortorella's eyes. I think he has his mind made up of who he wants here, who he doesn't want here. Every time we talk to him, he talks about the subtraction. It is looming around everyone. I think his mind is made up. So I think for someone like a Kevin Hayes or a JVR, I don't even put them in this picture because I think it's pretty clear with their age that this isn't the future for them with this franchise, especially how Torts and Danny Briere are harping on young guys coming in here. So what comes to mind is definitely a Wade Allison. I still think there's so many question marks around him. Torts called him out, said he's always hurt. He hasn't seen enough from him. Even if he goes out and lights up these final 6 games, I still think the picture of Wade Allison is he's not available enough. And when he is, there's plays where it's like, what's going on? So he one is highlighted to me. Joel Farabee, credit to him. I think he's kind of played his way out of the question marks. Travis Sanheim, still a lot of question marks. And I don't know what you do about that contract situation. I think if the contract was out of the picture, he would be by far my most major question mark. But I feel like his contract makes it where you can't really put him in that category.
Yeah, just starting an 8-year deal next year. I mean, they very much committed to him. And it sounds like the Flyers really want to stick with Travis Sanheim. Tortorella the other day said, we're determined to get this turned around. We don't know when it will happen, but we think we can get it turned around with Travis Sanheim. So I believe him and Brad Shaw just think so much of him and his ability. Can they get it right day in and day out? I think will be the challenge. But that's a great one. And Wade Allison, too. I just think he's very much like on the fringe.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
I think Tortorella sees it from time to time, but he thinks, 1, he's always hurt, as we heard him say a number of times. And 2, he's just not consistent enough. But boy, the talent is there. And I think the makeup's there for him to be like a really positive bottom 6 player. When he's going right, you see it.
Right. Who do you think?
Yeah, I'm going to say, one, credit to Morgan Frost. If you told me he was going to finish with 40-plus points this year and close to 20 goals, I think I would have thought that'd be a major victory for the Flyers. And that's actually where he is. So he has proved a ton. You mentioned Kevin Hayes. That's kind of my guy, is Kevin Hayes. I don't know where he fits next season if he does. I think that's a major question. I'm not sure John Tortorella believes he's a part of this moving forward. I just don't think he does. I don't think it's because they dislike each other. I know they've had their moments where they've butted heads a little bit, but I think Tortorella just believes he's not a part of this, possibly moving forward with the age and the desire to get younger, and potentially, obviously, with his game. I don't know if Tortorella really believes he's a 200-foot type of center.
Yeah.
But Kevin Hayes is only, I think, 4 points. He's got 53 points. His career high is 55. So he's 3 away from setting a new career high. And I think that would do a ton for his overall resume of, if the Flyers want to move on from him and try to trade him in the offseason, you could say, hey, this guy has a career high in scoring. He's a soon-to-be 31-year-old center, 6'5", a lot to like here. Or the Flyers could say, hey, we feel maybe he is a part of this moving forward, because of what we saw production-wise, because of the way he is as a leader within the locker room. So I think Kevin Hayes has a lot to prove. He has not scored a goal in 22 straight games. And he's now getting very close to setting a career high. We all thought he was going to blow past his career high in points. He has not, but still has a chance to grab it, get off the schneid with the goal scoring. Yeah. 22 games is a long time for him. So I think he has a ton to prove to the Flyers and also potentially teams that could be interested in the offseason.
Yes, that's a good one. It's a lot of question marks still with 6 games remaining.
Yeah, a ton with Kevin Hayes. Because as we mentioned, if guys aren't playing to stay here, they're playing to go elsewhere.
Oh, yeah. It's in their best interest, for sure.
Yeah. So for me, it's Kevin Hayes just because, he could be trying to impress other teams. And for the Flyers, again, either they'll know more about Kevin Hayes or they'll have a better picture of where he is in terms of trying to move him. But we'll see. We'll see if he's a part of the future. Any other guys, Ashlyn, that you can think of that maybe could show Tortorella something? But I'm with you. I think his mind is made up. It sounded like, how many times have we heard him say he's drawing up rosters for next year?
Right.
And he already has guys that are probably not a part of it, guys that are.
There are some guys that are already in Sharpie.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the guy in pencil.
No, exactly. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else. Kevin Hayes is obviously a guy that's older that I think has something to prove.
JVR is,
JVR, I think, is a guy that's probably going to move on and sign elsewhere. Sanheim's such a good one.
It's so confusing. It's so complex, and the contract makes it even more challenging.
Yeah.
I'm thankful that we don't get paid the big bucks to make those decisions, because I don't know I don't know how you hash that out. I don't know what the solution is there. And I don't think right now Torts or Danny Briere do as well.
No, I agree. And it blows my mind because Sanheim was probably one of the team's best players last year. And his numbers are better last year, even like from a goal prevention standpoint and from a production standpoint. And that was on a team that was really bad. And then this year, the Flyers kind of stabilized a little bit. They have a coach that, helped them get back to preventing goals at a better clip. They're producing offense a little bit more. And Sanheim, for some reason, took a step back. It was it's odd.
And he's admittedly the confidence.
Yeah.
Every time you talk to him, when we saw some progression, my confidence is getting back. Okay, well, now it's back down. And you can't help but ask with this 8-year extension, well, when is it going to be where it needs to be? And is it going to stay consistent? And no one has the answer for that, is what makes it so challenging. Travis does not have the answer for that. If you have to work through it for another year, okay. But is this what Travis Sanheim is? That's what we don't know right now.
Exactly. And I think the overwhelming positive is that they've had a number of their young players actually show that they are, I think, a part of the future. I think it would be really, really troubling if some of their young players that they've kind of touted as answers were not looking like answers.
Correct.
That's when I would be like, wow, they have a real problem.
Yeah.
Because even their young players are not answering the bell, and that tells you this thing could take way longer. But the fact that Owen Tippett is looking like he should be here. Joel Farabee looks like he's going to be fine, in my opinion, after a good offseason where he can gain strength. Cam York's looking like he's a part on the back end. And, of course, Morgan Frost, Noah Cates. I mean, I think the Flyers have better – I've said it a long time. I think they have better ingredients than what they get credit for.
Agreed. And I think Torts is excited when he talks about that roster. He's never going to say that, and he's always going to pump the brakes that this is going to take a long time because that's his job. He can't get excited. He never will. But when I thought the past couple of press conferences when he got asked about thinking about Sean Couturier and Cam Atkinson back in the lineup, and then you write out and you like what you see. I think when you add those ingredients, he does like what he sees, but he's never going to admit that.
Yep, spot on. And he's probably also thinking, about getting healthier too. If they can get some healthy veterans back and you kind of piece them around some young players that are hopefully getting better in the Flyers' eyes, maybe it goes a little quicker than people think, but he's very much going to be realistic about how long this can take. And it could take a while. I mean, this is going to be the third consecutive year of no playoffs, and I think everyone understands it could be 4 next year, but as long as they're taking strides and seeing young players grow and providing opportunity. But Tortorella is a guy that sometimes expedites, I think, rebuilds. He gets a lot out of less, and probably doesn't get enough credit for developing young players.
Yeah, and even if you look at this past month, I mean, they're right in it with playoff teams. It's a game. Even yesterday's game where it didn't look like they were going to make it a game in the third period, they always do. So you can't help but think, okay, well, what if they had 3 more pieces on the ice. And those 3 pieces are Cam Atkinson, Sean Couturier, and Tyson Forster from what we've seen.
Yeah.
Just think if you add that, what this could look like. I think it's going to look totally different.
Yeah, it's so funny you mentioned Forster because I think he really excited John Tortorella.
Oh my gosh, all of us.
Yeah,
and you catch yourself like pumping the brakes, like my gosh,
Yeah.
he only played a couple games, chill out. But from what you saw, you're like, yeah, I want more of that.
Yeah, exactly. When you're thinking future, like we're constantly tasked with thinking future. So when you see a kid like that come up and really open your eyes, it's hard not to say, hey, wow, maybe
this could work.
Yeah, this could work. This could be a piece to the Flyers eventually winning hockey games again, which I think everyone's trying to think of them doing again. Fans, I think, are just desperate for that again. So 6 games left. This road trip will continue. Ashlyn will have all the coverage on pre and post game live on NBC Sports Philadelphia and NBC Sports Philadelphia Plus. Ashlyn, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoy your day. A big thank you to Ben Berry, our podcast producer and guru, and Flyers fans, of course, as always. Thank you so much for listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. Wherever you get your podcast, please rate and listen, and we can't wait to talk to you next time.